What happens when a culture follows another species? For the Zeswa, it shapes their entire way of life. Welcome, or welcome back to another episode of Pandora through a biologist's eyes. For this one, we're going to do a little bit something a little bit different. We're going to take a closer look at one of the Navi clans that we can find in, well, the frontiers. So all of this place is the frontiers. We got the three big areas. I have a separate video about that, but this time we're going to focus on the Zeswa, which is the dominant clan that lives in the plains, and they have shaped their whole culture and their whole lifestyle around it. And what is interesting, because they have their main camp, which are with the other locations called Hometrees, they don't have a home tree because the Zeswa are nomadic. So they make their tents and then they just go around and they follow a very specific species, which I will show you in detail in a second. But first we're gonna take a look at the big camp. So it is nomadic. Okay, I don't know why she didn't come, that was horrible. Off to a good start. Fall to my death. Okay, so we're back at the camp. So this animal we see here, it is a zakru. And the zakru is the reason why it's one of the reasons, I guess, because it also depends on the lifestyle. But the Zeswa follow the zakru. So the zakru are migratory species, and the Zeswa follow them. So as you can see here, we got those, the tents, the locations. Just do like a little quick tour to see them. They're very colorful, they got different colors, different dyes. And of course we have different zakru lying around. So one thing that you of course notice about the plains, they're kind of empty. Like they're not as densely populated as the foresty areas are. So it's wider, it's more open, we've got lots of grasses and reeds here. So it's very hard to find good protection. So of course if you want to build a main camp, it should be somewhat sheltered. And we have that a lot, of course, with different people that we see, or different cultures that have evolved in grasslands. They typically tend to be nomadic. So all of the people in different cultures, be it with Native Americans that have been, focused their lifestyle around the plains hunting bisons, or if we have like also nomadic horse tribes, such as way in the days the Huns, or nowadays even the Mongolians, they're still a great part is them traveling, and then they travel around being followed by their horses, and they travel around with their goats. And it's kind of similar, the Zeswa definitely inspired, like being created with that in mind. And they don't have large herds of livestock because, as far as I'm aware, the Navi are still a hunter-gatherer society. So there is no agriculture, there is no animal husbandry. Even the bonds they have with the Ikran, it's like one singular Ikran, you kind of like bond with the wild one, or even with the direhorses. There are no fixed direhorse herds that travel with the Navi. If you need a direhorse, you kind of like call it kind of like a taxi and it just follows you, but it's not kind of kept as a livestock. So everything they need, they forage. So they look for fruits and roots and other types of stuff they can find in nature. And of course, a big part is hunting. So that, of course, always limits a little bit the population size like a settlement can have, because even in the early days, humans that were hunter-gatherers, they could only have so many people in their group because they needed to feed them all. So which with agriculture and animal husbandry, that made feeding so many people easier, and the settlements became bigger. So you don't really have that. But when, of course, they travel, and it's the unique thing about the zakru, they are like this elephant-like thingies, and they have a very unique lifestyle, as in they kind of like put their huge trunk into the ground, and then they kind of like go into this kind of like hibernation slumber while they take their food sources from the ground up. Just they'll awake and they open their eyes, but they're like a really big part of the Navi. Kind of like, I think it is a very good comparison would be, of course, with, I think it is the Maori on New Zealand. They have this whale fascination, and like a huge thing with whales, like they're huge creatures that they respect and have this very unique folklore about them. And it is, of course, the same here too, and they like revere them. You can see them, they have paintings on them, they paint them, they follow them, they kind of like build their shelters around them. And when the zakru start to wander, they also, I'm going to assume, help them carry their housings, because it's very hard to carry it all with the Navi. I mean, you could probably try to tie them to direhorses and kind of like drag it behind, but that by itself would be going to be difficult. But if you have, you know, those large zakru, you could just like pack them up and then they would travel around, and wherever they lie down to find their next meal, you build your camp around them. But let's start in with the human side of this, or well, the Navi side. So here they have these kind of like yurt-like structures. They have different buildings and they all have different functions. So like if you're gonna see it, I'm gonna show you around a little bit. We can see that they have like their different size tents or yurts or whatever you want to call it. They have different functions. So in this here, they tend to make this kind of like milk thingy. Although I have not for sure figured out because there's some types of plant milk or if they really are milking the zakru. So I had to look it up. So it is zakru, called zakru milk, but I don't know if it's like milk that you get from the mammary glands or if it's like some weird kind of like secretion that is just called milk, but I don't want to deep dive into that. Because I always have this weird scene from the new Star Wars movies in mind where he's like drinking this blue milk and it's just like ew. Well, we can see they also make cheese here. So they definitely have this kind of like destined tent. So all of the tents have a meaning, and since the Navi have like a shared space, there isn't really too much, oh, this is mine, this is yours. So because they have like a shared lifestyle. And as you can see here, they have different fish that they dry, which is also very important. Like when people move around or even when settlements form, almost all big human settlements are near some sort of water source, because water is very, something we all need. They have cooking stations, which are all over the game, of course, and where you can also cook. And what's interesting is you can see that they dry meat, which is like a great idea if you have too much meat, because you can process it all. Before it spoils, you just dry it and make kind of like jerky out of it. You have different areas where people sit together.
Is worth celebrating with a bit of zanke.
So one thing is also important. Navi do not have currency. They get it all by trading. So they trade, like clans kind of like have their specialties and they have their like unique resources, and they trade that. So they trade it with other clans too. So I think the what they say from the movies and a lot of the in-game lore, they're also kind of like warring with each other. So it's like a very, we're calling like a very, to a degree, tribal warfare, as we see like with lots of hunter-gatherers cultures, or we saw at least with locations that were kind of like similar. For example, I think there were some documented cases in Papua Guinea where different people, different clans, different tribes went against each other. They also, of course, dry leather here and do leather works. And as you can see, the zakru, they all have different paintings on them. So here we have a large tent, which is kind of like a big hub. You can see again cheese making. And one thing we can notice when we look at the ground, you see those carpet-like structures. They're made from reeds and grasses. So they kind of like braid them and weave them, because reeds and grasses are of course abundant here. And you'll see that because I do plan on making a tour by showing different things. Oh look, they're having like a little sparring match up there. And that's also great, like if you have a large community like this, you have different things and everyone just sticks together.
So many kites to make. Would a Ranahe cloth suit?
Yes, that's also one thing I want to say. They do have those kites you can see around, and again, they weave it from reeds and grasses. And the Ranahe, for example, they really have some sort of cloth that they get from this silk moth-like animal.
Honest fight is what you want. No tricks.
But I seem to have like some sparring matches. What's also interesting with the Navis, or the Navi, I guess, it wouldn't be Navis, they have their clan structure is kind of like it's not, they're not all related, so there definitely seems to be some, like not all of them are related, it's just different clans with different families that have formed together with various sizes. But yeah, you can also see by their clothing, they have lots of this weaving on, their colors tend to be more in those yellowish red colors. They all have a somewhat similar hairstyle. Kind of like, you know, different cultures have different hairstyles and they have like very unique ways of way they look. They have this lots of braids, and they have like this cone-like structures I've noticed with a lot of characters have. It looks really neat. But yeah, you can also see the clothes there, this weaving with the reeds and the grasses, but they have their colors in there, the orange, yellow, red. So some areas are carpeted, then you kind of like build your way of life all around nature.
The world changes so quickly.
Got some seating areas.
Friendships remain.
You can go out here again.
Our leaders are wise beyond.
And they have, of course, markings all around the place, kind of like they decorate the areas. Of course, guards are always important to have, just in case, since you are in the open plains and there are, you know, predators, plus you might go into warfare with some other clans.
Always welcome here, friend.
His hands have woven many tents through the years. All still stand.
Yeah, he says like they are kind of like weaving it, everything themselves. And they craft their houses, or it's not even houses, it's their tents and the yurts. And of course, when the zakru are done feeding, they just kind of like pack up and leave altogether. Here we have kind of like a workstation, like I can craft stuff here too, but you can also see there is more work going on here. So they have like kind of like this workspace area, or like a communal workspace, I guess. And also something usually when you are in a, there's like a sleeping area, they got those hammocks. So everything is shared, like no one has their own separate tent where they live in, but they all share it. Like the leg is going through there. And they all live together. And there's also something interesting about the Navi. They seem to be more like a, yeah, like a matriarchal society with definitely the female spiritual leader. And they're always female. I think the role of the clan leader, kind of like a, we might go to warfare there, we do this, we do that, doesn't really matter if it's a male or a female Navi. But being the spiritual one, the connection to Ewa, that is only something that the female is usually, kind of like Neytiri's mother is the Sahik. They're also having here, you can see the stuff they have foraged. And some more fish. So I guess they have different roles, kind of like what a beehive would have, where people just go out and some of them go hunting, some of them go gather, and some of them process. You can also see children around every now and then, like the little Navi just sitting on the ground. I usually just stumbled upon them. Then here we have them dry different herbs, spices, and of course meat. Another big part for them, of course, are the direhorses and the ikran. The ikran they do not have a designated area where they kind of like sleep, because an ikran is really bonded to one Navi and it follows that Navi, even though they're kind of like, they don't have fixed stables for them. None of the Navi have. So the ikran are just like chilling nearby, I guess, like sitting in the trees, waiting until they're called, and just like being kind of like wild and let until you need them. And then, oh, there's a child right here. So then, of course, we have the direhorses. And the direhorses, they aren't really, can I look at this one? No, it's kind of like a decorative direhorse. But the direhorses are kind of like the same way, but they don't have a fixed bond with Navi. So it's not like the direhorse will kind of like follow you where you go. You kind of like just call it over and just like then skedaddles off somewhere else. Again, here we see the water. And again, because this area is really, really windy and the winds tend to come from the same side, you need to build yourself in a way that you shelter from the wind. Which is why you notice they are open to some sides, because the wind is coming from the eastern side and it just blows this way. So you don't really need to cover it all. Of course, I guess with all the holes in there, if there's like a strong wind and rain, you're gonna be very, very wet. But I guess it's just like some slight oversight or design choice.
Patience rewards us. So too with
But yeah, here we can see them craft different pouches, and it's a lot of weaving. This one is creating a bow. So we've got this communal workspaces and everything. So Navi do not have iron, so they form everything from, or not iron, just like it's metal in general. So they form everything from rock, bones and stuff. So here we have some arrows that they of course need.
You are always welcome here.
The rush of winning is a strong one, but do not let it cloud your head.
Oh, here you can see with her top, like we got this nice, the braids, the braids, sorry, the weaving of the braided and weave top with the reeds and the grasses. The legs are bending with. Why am I? But yeah, so as you see, the direhorses, they don't have anything. There's like no gear on it, so they just kind of like get called over and then you ride them. I also can't look at this one. So we have also some tents and yurts here that are kind of like a little further away. This one is eating in peace, like a little hammock. So some of them seem to have their own little tents, but then they got like large communal areas as well. Yeah, this is also like a communal area. They got like meats and spices drying. There's some fish here. The fish looks really crazy. You can see the eyes here.
I know what I saw.
So on this outskirt we have some smaller tents as well. And they have those bulbs, I think, that I'm not sure from which plant they're from, but they seem to be bioluminescent to a degree. Kind of like lighting up, using as a natural light.
Dance fighting is not the only art.
Yeah, so they have different cultures and apparently they're like really onto the dance fighting. You can hear the direhorse snore, that's really adorable. So we can see different groups of Navi, like on the outskirts of the camp.
But you do not have to make yourself big.
I could hardly do it if I tried.
Oh, it looks like they're harvesting. So you can see them, they're kind of like, you need to cut those reeds to kind of like weave more of the tent space or clothing or carpets. So it's like always like a little thing to keep everything, yeah, in check and intact. But this settlement looks kind of big from the people, like it seems to be, I mean, I'm bad at guessing, but like just from a look at how many Navi I see around, and then it's like you need to consider you don't just see all of them, quite a few of them might be out and doing something. You probably have over 100. Can also go in here, so some of the zakru are more or less completely covered.
Arches are magnificent up close.
You can see them digging into the ground. And they all have like those markings on them. And it just looks at you. It's really nice.
Have a taste for adventure.
What's interesting about the zakru too, they have hair. Quite a few animals on Pandora have hair or hair-like structures. And you can see the bioluminescence around their eyes.
Oh, my feet. That dire horse just kept running from me.
It's really nice when it just kind of like activates and you can watch it, like the, you know, the bioluminescence lighting up. So here we have another workstation with some milk. Got those pots, a little sitting area. And of course we got the planet lighting everything up with the light being reflected off of it. Then of course we got the bioluminescence. So it's actually very lit up, first off because of the planet being like a huge beam. And then also we got the bioluminescence inside as well. So here we are from the main tent where they were earlier. Just a little overview. And here so they use this, I'm not quite sure, I think it's a kind of like an animal. I think it doesn't tell me what it is, so I think it just tied down. Because usually if you want to harvest or like use bioluminescence effective, you can't kill that animal or that plant, because once you chop it off, the bioluminescence will stop, as long as the kind of like when the animal dies and the chemical reactions stop, because there's no more like nutrition or no more flow and no more kind of like source material for the bioluminescence to occur, because it's a chemical process. Then there will be no bioluminescence. So if you have like this bioluminescence reed and you cut it off, after some while the bioluminescence will stop. I think in some animals it's more instantaneous, because the moment they're gone, they're dead, it kind of just like stops. Because it's kind of like a process. So you'd have something that's kind of like a salp-like structure, jelly-like, some sort of jellyfish, or like those floating, that the wind travelers harness. Could be like a relative to that. But it definitely needs to be alive, which is kind of like you just tie it down, I guess. Now we can hear them partying. Now here can we see the markings at the front of the zakru. It looks really nice. We also have a baby zakru here. So it kind of like follows them. And having like probably the mother and the baby.
Migrating soon?
Oh, see there, like when they get up again and they're kind of like they're done feeding because they kind of like used it all up, or they kind of like depleted the sources of food in the ground, then they start traveling again, and then the Navi pack up and then they travel together. Yeah, you see more of that in the DLC. I'll definitely do plan on focusing a little bit on the zakru because it's a really fascinating animal. But yeah, you can hear them breathe. Baby looks to be asleep, but the mom's awake.
I always feel safe with the zakru close by.
I mean, the zakru are pretty gigantic, and they're like a nice cover. That's very nice. They have this symbiotic relationship. And as I said, like the zakru can get very old, so they have like a lot of... You can have like your quote-unquote own zakru that, you know, you've been following for generations, and that has been kind of like helping you carry your stuff, like you grew up with it. It's really, really interesting from the... Yeah, from a bonding kind of view. Got more leather drying here. This one is working the leather right now. It's also very neat that you can see them doing different tasks. Like when I started walking through here, they weren't really working the leather. And I find that really interesting, and it's like a nice level of detail that they have. Just trying to show you something, if I can find it. Yeah, they're doing something with the thingy. The little gourd-like structure. Maybe some milk in there. More meat drying.
But they look so happily asleep.
That is because they're stuffing their bellies full. Wait until they get hungry.
This is what I wanted to show you.
I should get some rest.
So you can see them patrolling and riding around with the direhorses. So they're with their nomadic lifestyle. Again, lots of cultures that have nomadic lifestyle with horses. They're very well equipped to traversing on those horses. But again, no, that's the thing that bothers me with riding on because they ride like humans. Look at the tail. That would be very pleasant. If you have a tail, you can't sit like this on a horse. It doesn't work this way. But that's the problem with when you have like motion capturing with humans, and then they ride you sit on it like a human, because we humans don't have tails anymore. So kind of like off, you should sit different on it. But I guess it's just an oversight. But yeah, again, the roles in general, except from having like a sahik, like a spiritual leader, and a clan leader, there aren't really that strict roles for men and women. So they kind of like share everything, which is also very interesting in hunter-gatherer communities. That's usually typically, so there's like not the woman should stay home and cook. They usually share their tasks. That's something very interesting too. That's this very specific gender role usually came up with when humans started to settle down for good, and then they got more focused on particular roles, like, you know, men go out and then women stay home and cook. That's just something that happened with human becoming sedentary and settling down. But in hunter-gatherer communities, they're usually very equal when it comes to sharing tasks. Like they go out hunting, same with the Navi. Females go out hunting, males go out hunting. Some gather, some guard. So it's like kind of like like everyone shares everything. Same goes with the whole community work, I guess. I mean, of course, some people probably are more skilled than others in certain tasks, but you share everything. You help everything, and again, because you don't really have currency, you're not like one's richer than the others, you kind of like share stuff. So you all work together, so your whole clan can survive. So it's a very family-focused, clan-focused life. So you're kind of like very focused on your closest people, be it like your neighbors, your tent mates, or even like your blood relatives.
If we ignore the Sky People today, they will swarm the circle tomorrow.
Well, I hope you liked that episode. You learned a little bit of stuff. I know it's a bit different, but I definitely want to show you some more about the different Navi clans that we have, because they are also very important, and it's not just like a clear biology focus, but it's also because why are people, or in this case the Navi, why are they choosing specific settlements? Why are they building here? Why are they using this place as a location? And that is typically something that is affected by biology, be it like animals that they follow, or just the nature and the ecology itself. Like, why would they settle here? Why on this specific spot on Pandora? And that it's something that I find is very interesting, and I wanted to showcase a little more and help understand, because a lot of the stuff is with nature and with people is that, you know, we're a part of it, and we kind of like adapt ourselves. Of course, with humans having their large cities and kind of like taking over nature to a degree and being really, yes, to some point very far from it, it's really nice to see the comparison with the Navi, how some people used to live or are still living today, and how we can see it reflected in the Navi. And hopefully get a little understanding about how beautiful nature is and how nice it is to kind of live in harmony with it. And that's something that the Zeswa definitely do, especially when they follow their zakru all over the place, which is like a very close connection to nature and to a completely different species. But they have built their whole life around that species because they grew up with that species, they follow it, it helps them carry, and their whole way of living has, like, in addition, evolved around the zakru. So they can all coexist together, and probably they would have trouble existing without the zakru because they're so dependent on them. Like, they're all traveling together. It has been something that's been established for probably centuries at this point. Well, I hope you liked it. I was thinking about like just doing a day tour, but I like to see how it changes at night. You can see the differences in camp, in the bioluminescence and everything. Well, I hope you did like it. I do plan on making more content also this way, like showing a little bit of the Navi life and how they live with nature, or how the kind of like specialties they have, because they all, a lot of their lifestyle and the arts and crafts they do is affected by their environment, the ecology they have. Now we see the sunrise. Well, I wish you a great day, and with that I'll say bye.